Well, I was in lots of different bands. I mean, it was, I did my own thing, or tried to do my own thing, I should say. And but I played in all kinds of different bands. I played in a
Of course. So I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music. And I want to talk about the new record you put out, and maybe a little bit about the stuff you did for the Elvis biopic,
sure,
because I thought that
anything
was
you
really
want.
cool. Awesome, man.
Hmm.
Well, you're in Nashville, correct?
Hmm. I am
Awesome.
indeed. Yes.
Very cool. That's where
Hmm.
recently moved here about 2 years ago now.
Oh yeah. Okay. What part of town are you in, man?
I'm south down by Franklin.
Me too, actually. So
Oh,
not far
wow.
from you.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Awesome. Awesome.
Hmm.
Well, that's awesome. Well, how long have you been here? Were you born and raised in Nashville?
No, I was born and raised in Chicago, but I moved here in February of '06. So I've been here
Oh,
a
okay.
while.
You've been here a while then. So you grew up in,
Hmm.
you said Chicago?
Yes, sir.
What was
Hmm.
that like?
It was great. I grew up on the north side in the city, um, first in an apartment building on the corner of Armitage and Halstead, which is sort of up by Wrigleyville.
Mhm.
And It's a great place to grow up, city kid, having access to all the things that a major city has to offer.
Sure. Yeah, that must have been
Music.
wild,
Yeah.
like, being able to just kinda get through the city. I lived in San Francisco for a little bit, and I always
Hmm.
thought it was so, you know I was always curious about the kids that grew up there, being able to have access to kinda getting around, places, a little bit more freedom than the suburbs.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's all I ever knew, so I only can look at it retrospectively and
Mhm.
and surmise. But yeah, it was a wonderful place to grow up. Obviously a lot of culture, and all the neighborhoods. At least when I was, it's become less so the last couple of decades, but when I was a little boy, there was very much, like every ethnic group had their neighborhood and they all coexisted, but they were all very distinct and, needless to say, with art and movies and music and so on and so forth, it was a beautiful place to grow up and be exposed to everything.
Sure, sure. What about a musical household? Do you come from one? Or
No, not at all, not at all. I come from a family of athletes and very hardcore athletes, and
Oh, is
and
that
I grew up,
right?
yeah, I grew up loving sports, like any American boy. I think. I mean, I'm still very obsessed with baseball in particular, but I played, everything: hockey, basketball, baseball, football. But I fell in love with music really, really, really young, and that was it. But it was very much my thing, you know.
Mhm. You said you come from a sports household. Was your your dad or mom or somebody in, like, play, or do you have
My my
siblings?
father my father was a I don't have any I have half siblings, as it were.
Okay.
My father raised a family of four in the 50s. He was
Oh,
quite a bit
wow.
older when I was born. He was actually 50 years old when I was born. And so generationally he raised me very much as if I was a child of the 50s or 60s.
Okay.
But So I didn't have any siblings per se, even though my half siblings were a part of my life when I was growing up and still am. But my father was he played everything, but he ended up becoming a coach for hockey at the University of Illinois and
Wow.
at Chicago, and he was also a scout for the Chicago Blackhawks for a long period of time.
That's
Um,
amazing. That's, like, the
as
one
in it,
sport
it,
I don't know a whole lot about. I love watching. I've never been to an NHL game. Growing up
mhm.
in San Diego, we didn't have a team, but I really wanna go
Yeah,
check out
yeah.
the Predators.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. You should. It's really fun. But yeah, no, it's he so he that was but my father just loves all sports, so and he played everything. He's not very big in stature. So he didn't end up going pro or anything, but he played semi-pro hockey, semi-pro baseball.
Wow.
Played basketball in college and stuff like that. Like he was all about it, you know.
Mhm.
A true Chicago city boy.
Sure. So did you grow up playing sports at all, or was music way more of your interest?
I mean, I did grow up playing sports, and I was very obsessed with baseball and still am. But but no, music. I you know, I was 4 years old when I got my first guitar, and it
Wow.
was pretty much over from that point forward. Because I
How
was
did
playing in bars and stuff by the time I was 9. So
No
um
way. Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
so it took over real quick. Yeah.
At 4, do you have just like this I mean, what kind of guitar would you have gotten
It
at
was
4
just a little
years old?
acoustic. I actually have it in the other room.
Do you
It's a
really?
little
That's cool
acoustic.
that you kept
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and, but no, I saw Elvis on television, which is a huge full circle thing, having been involved with the movie.
Uh-huh.
But that was like the initial impetus, you know, was I saw Elvis on television and was really taken with it. There were several other things that happened right around that time, but the main impetus for making me want to to get an instrument at all.
So you
And
bought a your parents bought you a guitar at that point, or
yeah, they did, and I took lessons in the very beginning, um, and but I took to it really quick, you know, and was obsessed with it. Would go to my room and sit with piles of records and stuff like that. It was very much, and still am, a record nerd. But you know,
yeah, same
and
here. I got
records
on
were,
the other side of this wall, I've got a ton of vinyl on the other
yeah,
side of my
yeah.
camera.
It was a great. It was great. It was very fortuitous, you know, because like at the time, you know, because I was born in '85, so we're talking about 1989, 1990,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
you know, like
I was born in '84, so we're about the same age.
there you go. So it's like vinyl was on its way out,
Oh yeah.
and they were cheap. You know, like I could go to the record store that was near where I grew up and buy records for 50 cents or a buck a piece. And
Mhm.
so a $5 allowance could get me a lot of records every week, you know. So I was
Sure.
very, you know, and I had a really great library, the Lincoln Park Library, which I talk about often because they had pretty much every record ever made. And
Really? You could just check them out?
yeah, mhm.
That's
And
incredible.
like music movies and documentaries and stuff like that. I mean, it was just like my what I often joke about is like had I grown up in like Des Moines, Iowa or something like that, I'd be a very different person, you know, because I
Yeah.
had access to so much in
Uh-huh.
Chicago, in the neighborhood in Chicago I grew up in, you know.
Well, you said you took lessons starting at you were 4 when you started guitar lessons?
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow. I mean, I have a 6-year-old, so I can't even imagine 2 years ago of him, we got him a drum kit, I guess, at 4, but that's
Yeah,
just him smashing them. But I mean, the guitar is such a more technical instrument when it comes to like, I feel like a
sure,
4-year-old being able to push down the strings and
sure.
that's really cool.
Hmm. I have a 4-year-old daughter right now, so I completely, you know,
Oh, you've been throwing her on the
yeah.
guitar? Or what?
She has a guitar and she actually does take lessons at school.
Wow.
But, you know, yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about, you know, it's I mean, I just, you know, I don't remember it, you know, so it's
Sure,
just
sure.
whatever.
But you obviously got really good to play in a bar at 9.
I
So
don't know if I was that good. I think it was, you know, it's cute, you know,
yeah,
until you get to be about 23 or 24, I think you can kind of get away with murder, you know.
right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, but he's 16, or oh, but he's 20, you know, or whatever. And it's like at a certain point, I think 23, 24 is when it, you know, your age no longer is a prerequisite. It's just
Right.
whether
They're
you're
like,
good,
"Oh, you're
whether you're
23."
good or not. Yeah. It's
Right.
like whether is he good or not, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, to be able to even go to the bar at 9, you must have had pretty supportive family when it came to allowing you
Ops.
to go out and play. And how
Oh
do you
yeah.
even get into that scene at that age?
You just show up and you try and be kind and courteous and ask permission. And
Okay. Did you just look up places that would kind of allow you to do that, or like how did you
oh
even?
no, 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 no. There's no way to, you just pick places and you go
Okay,
try.
that's
Um
cool.
and you know, slowly but surely you um you make friends, and you make, for me, I always had to work with people that were older than me. I always had to play with people that were older than me because no one I grew up with was into it.
Mhm.
They were all into way other things. And it wasn't until I moved to Nashville when I was 21 that I ever really became immersed musically with a bunch of people that were my age, you know.
Oh, is that right? So
Um,
even through high
oh yeah.
school and everything else, you didn't play
Oh yeah, no,
in
nobody was
bands or
into it.
anything?
No, no. I mean, I was in bands the entire time,
But
and I
not with
actually
kids
dropped.
your school?
Never. No, no, because nobody was into it. And I subsequently, like I ended up dropping out of high school at 15, and I left to go play music full time. Um,
Really? Were you in a
and
band? Like, how
yeah,
did that work?
well, I was in lots of different bands. I mean, it was, I did my own thing, or tried to do my own thing, I should say. And but I played in all kinds of different bands. I played in a with my family relocated to Phoenix, Arizona when I was like 13, and
Mhm.
I hated it there. And just going from Chicago to there, it was just like, get me out of here. And
Yeah.
I played in a band called Barrio Latino, which we played like cumbias and stuff like that. I played in, rock bands and stuff of that ilk. I did all types of different stuff and toured all over the country, and uh, which is what leads me to when I moved here to Nashville. Is I'd been touring all of my teenage years, and I was 20 at the time, and um, I was like, I got to move somewhere that might have some more opportunities for me.
Mhm.
And I ended up moving here because I still have a very dear friend who was actually best man at my wedding, who who was here. It was that simple. I knew somebody here.
Yeah, and so you moved to Nashville. Were you writing songs at this point or just playing kind
Oh
of with
yeah, I
other
mean,
bands?
I started. I started writing, when I was a little kid. Like making up songs and stuff. Um, but yeah, by the time I moved here, I mean, I'd been playing professionally for over 10 years, and yeah, I thought I was something else when I moved here. I found out very quickly that I wasn't, which
Do
is, part
well, I
of the
was gonna say,
deal.
well, yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you get here, are you just trying to write songs and pursue a an
I
artist
was
project
trying to do
or
I was trying everything. I tried to get a country deal. I was trying to get work as a guitarist. I was doing anything and everything, and I failed miserably for about 9 months. And I was about to pack it up and leave. And I went and played on a street corner downtown on Broadway, mostly because I was feeling sorry for myself. And a friend of mine, Dave Rowe, who's Johnny Cash's longtime bass player and a very prolific session musician who I knew, walked by and saw me and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I told him the truth, and he said, "Well, come meet Don Kelly, who's a very he's now retired, but he was at the time, uh, probably Nashville's longest band leader. He formed a band in the uh, basically 30 over 30 years ago, and the succession of incredible session musicians and stuff that all in a line from the very first lineup up until just about a year ago is just incredible to name. And anyway, he Dave was playing in the band at the time, and in that band called the Don Kelly Band, and he asked me to follow him and introduce me to Don. And it's a much longer story than that, but I eventually ended up in that band, and every my life changed very much as
wow.
a
So,
result of that.
yeah, so once you get in that band, are you put in different sessions with people as a guitar player? Is that what kind of happens? Like,
Well, it took a minute. It took a few months.
mhm,
It's a long story because it's basically that band is like a bluegrass country western swing kind of band. really, really hard music. I'd never played that style of music before. So that's a whole nother story of just having to work harder than I've ever worked prior or since to try and be the person that could get the gig first and foremost.
Sure.
Um, and also at the same time having other notable guitarists gunning for that position. Um, but for whatever reason, I did find my way into that band, and I wasn't comfortable in that band for quite a long time. It took about 2 years to finally get some semblance, and we were playing 4 hours a night, 5 or 6 nights a week, and that's invaluable. I mean, in the end, I was with the band a little over 6 years, which is about the time frame my predecessors in that group were people like Brent Mason and Kenny Vaughan and Guthrie Trapp and Johnny Hyland and Red Volkart and Troy Lancaster and a bunch of other very notable session musicians. Um, and but there's my 10,000 hours, as it
Hmm.
were, just in that band alone.
Hmm.
And but after I'd been in the band about 6 months or so, I started getting called to work on stuff. And in the beginning, it's just small. It's just going to somebody's house to overdub some stuff or whatever. But over the course of several years, it escalated, yeah, to the point of playing on masters and people's records and stuff. And at the height of it, I was working pretty much every day and then playing with that band at night, and it was intense.
Yeah, that's got to be a lot. What
Mhm.
was there like like what was like the first kind of big, record you got to play on, or like a big moment you're like, whoa, like this is like next level?
Uh, well, like the first hit record I ever played on was something for Rodney Atkins. That was like the first hit record I ever played on, and but really, it had more to do. Like the first, like, wow, look what I'm doing is when I started playing on records with other musicians that I'd known of.
Hmm.
Like the first time I played on something with Matt Chamberlain, who's a real famous session drummer from Los
Hmm.
Angeles. Uh, like getting to work regularly with people of that caliber was more impressive to me than necessarily the artist.
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
I was like, wow, look at, it's like I get to work with you know, Dan Dugmore all week, or I get to work with uh my buddy Fred Eltringham or something like that. It was
Hmm.
just, that was more impressive to me at the time.
Sure. Sure. And were you always still writing songs yourself, or like were you just pretty much
Well, I
overwhelmed with
tried
all of that
in the mid.
stuff?
Well, no, I mean, you have to kind of compartmentalize. I mean, I was in the middle of all of that. I was toying with the idea of, like, getting a publishing deal and being a writer. So I was doing co-writes. There was a period there where I was doing co-writes in the middle of all of that other stuff. Um, but I hated it. I hated doing that.
Right.
I didn't like it at all. I didn't agree with it. It didn't agree with me. I didn't like it. Um, so yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, I was always coming up with stuff, but really the big thing that happened was, I found myself after several years of being very overwhelmed. I was only in my mid 20s, and I was just overwhelmed by all of it. And I wasn't very happy either. I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. And so I just kind of stopped, and I met a couple of like-minded musicians, one of which I still work with to this day, Adam Abershoff, who uh, I've been fortunate enough, to play with, who's one of the world's best drummers. Um, uh, and started working on an original project, which slowly came to fruition, because it became evident that if I was going to uh, really kind of dedicate myself to trying to do something like that, I had to, I couldn't, I had to make that, I had to focus solely on that. I couldn't be doing everything that I was doing, because then there just would be no time.
Mhm.
And so, and that was obviously a very tough decision, because it was, it was choosing to walk away from, a pretty lucrative monetary world, with a lot of risk.
Right.
But I'm glad that I did, in retrospect, because it really freed me, both artistically, emotionally, all that other stuff. And now, 10 years later from that time period, uh, everything I have is in my life is a result of those decisions I made. And I'm very happy, because not only do I get to go off and make records of my own, and go out and play with my friends and do whatever I want, essentially. But also now, as a session musician, especially these last few years, my session career went from completely dormant and extinct, really, to now it's as thriving as it ever was, if not more so. But the difference is, it's basically everything I'm involved in is something that I'm really into,
Mhm.
stylistically, musically, all that, you know. And that's a huge, a huge thing,
Yeah. I
I'm
mean, to
very
take that
grateful.
risk, right? I mean, like you said, you have a lucrative thing and you get to play, but you're also making money, but not
Mhm.
being totally fulfilled and making that jump. Like, okay, this could either go two ways.
Mhm.
And I mean, that takes a lot of courage, obviously.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. But I mean, it was just, a great lesson to learn for a young person is that money won't make you happy, because I had more money than I'd ever thought I could have, and I was miserable.
Mhm.
So it was a great lesson to learn to, like, not chase the money,
Sure.
because I was pretty unhappy at that point, and it was, it's safe to say, I mean, I was 25, 26, and I think, at least in my life right now, I'm seeing more of my friends coming to those realizations now than 10, 12 years ago,
Mhm.
so I'm really grateful that I had that fortitude that early. That was, you know, unique.
Mhm. With your project now, from what I was reading, I mean, you tour a lot, right? And was
Do
that sorry, go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it seems like that was a big part of your life in your late teens into early 20s before you moved to Nashville. You were playing with other people and touring quite a bit. Did that slow down when you joined this band in Nashville and we're doing these
Oh
session
yeah,
things?
I didn't tour at all for all those years, because I couldn't. I
Sure.
was I
And
was given many I was offered many, 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 many gigs,
uh-huh.
and some that were very lucrative. But I had no reason to leave,
Right.
because I had not only did I have incredible financial security, but I had enviable positions. So I never had to go, be a side guy and tour with anybody.
Mhm.
Um, and and that's continued. I mean, even to this day, I mean, I basically only tour, you know, um, doing any one of my many projects that I'm involved in. Um, Occasionally I'll go out and play with people that are friends of mine. Um, but but yeah, I've never, you know, it's only been ever really in the studio, you
Oh,
know.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if with when you started this project, if you would do the, put an album out and kind of tour the cycle of that
Oh, well,
record or
yeah, now,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
since
yeah.
then, yeah, absolutely. And we were crazy. I mean, like, 2016 in particular was nuts. We were gone 300 days that year. I
Oh,
remember.
wow.
I don't remember how many shows. It was two something. It was 240, 250 something shows, but we were gone 300 days, and that is absolutely stupid. No one should do that. You'll go
That's a
crazy.
lot. Yeah.
It's a lot,
Um,
and it'll drive you insane. Like, it's not a healthy thing to do. Trust
mhm.
me.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of touring. So with I know this project, you were on the road, right? And when you came back and did this new album or
Yeah.
these new songs and some covers.
Hmm. Yeah, we just now, especially this side of COVID, my touring schedule is really great because I'll go out for a couple weeks, you
Hmm.
know, come home for a month, do sessions and do stuff, you know, produce other people, all that kind of, all the things I've got my hands in, work on film stuff. Um, so yeah, so the touring has been very leisure for the most part this past couple of years, and so yeah, we were out. We did like a run in the spring for a few weeks, and came back, and we were home for a minute, and there were just tunes that I enjoyed playing that hadn't been recorded. So I have a studio here that I do a lot of work in, and yeah, just had the guys over and for a couple of days, and we just leisurely recorded those tunes, and came up with a couple other things, and uh, I didn't really have a plan for it. I don't really, especially in the mindset that I'm in right now, I don't really plan. I just do. I figure out what I sort of figure out what to do with stuff sometimes after the fact. Um, I'm a fan of the doing part, and so I figured I would figure out what to do with it afterwards. Maybe do an EP, or maybe do a vinyl only release of it, or maybe save it for record store day this year or something like that. But
Hmm.
I played it for my team, as it were, after we'd done it, and they were all like, "Well, this should be your next record," and I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." You know, I hadn't conceived of it that way, but I saw their point. And as a result, it's the easiest project I've ever worked on because there was no thought. It was just get
Yeah,
together
like
and
just a couple days, what you said at your house, and you produced the
yeah,
whole thing and recorded the whole thing.
yeah, super, super. I mean, we may have been together 7 hours over those 2 days. Like it's
Oh
not.
my God, it was that
It's
quick.
oh
Wow.
yeah, no, we just most of it was hanging out and eating lunch. You know.
Did you have the couple of songs that are originals written already, or were they written kind of on the spot with the rest of the band?
Missy Strut, the instrumental that's sort of like a meters tune, we
Hmm.
came up with one of those days. But Mortgage on My Soul, we'd been playing.
Hmm.
Um, Afro Blue, we had played. The Blind Afro Reed song was a tune that I just had always wanted to play, so we just played it then and there and recorded it. And Higher Plane is basically what we end most of the shows with. So we've been playing that. So yeah, I mean, it was just super, super easy, super simple, and very, very. It's not a jazz album per se, but it's very. The ethos of it is very that because it's just room mics and uh, just a couple guys playing live, without any overdubs or anything, and it's mostly very improvisational.
Hmm.
Um, especially, I mean, Afro Blue is a Coltrane song and
Yeah, I
stuff.
was gonna
So,
say.
but very, sort of starting to lean in that direction, which is a great love of mine. That's pretty much all I've been listening to, um, just in my own normal listening. It's been several months where I don't think I've listened to anything but jazz, but that's beside the point, I guess.
Yeah, kind of the mood you're in right now.
Yeah, it's just
That's
what brings
cool.
me joy. Yeah.
Sure. Well, having kind of the moment when you're 4 and seeing Elvis on TV, and then that being the kind of spark that really got this whole thing going for you. What was it like to get, the call, or how were you approached about doing the Elvis thing?
Well, it was amazing. It was Dave Cobb, my good friend, big producer here in town, um, called me in the summer of 2018, and I was coming home from a tour, luckily, and he was calling to see if I was available to do a few days of sessions for an Elvis movie. He said, "I'm going to start working on an Elvis movie," and he's like, "I need you to like not only do Scotty Moore and Reggie Young and James Burton and stuff like that, but he's like, there's going to be a lot of other period uh, stuff. Sister Rosetta Thorpe, and I don't remember who else he mentioned initially, but he's like, "It's all this stuff that's right up your alley." And luckily, I was available. And this is before Austin Butler was cast,
Oh,
because
okay.
we actually participated in Austin's screen test. I remember.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so we assembled. We did all of it at RCA here in
In
Nashville,
Nashville. Uh-huh.
and it was a long project. We would do spurts of sessions. We would do a bunch, and then they'd go off and do their thing, and then we'd reconvene and do a bunch more. And we basically did that up until Christmas of 2021, when we finally finished it all. And of course, COVID was smack dab right in the middle of that. So there was about a 6-month period where everything was kind of on hold with the rest
Mhm.
of the world, obviously. Um, but it was incredible. It was luckily I didn't know who Baz Luhrmann was. um, I didn't understand the magnitude of what of the project, until we were well into it, you know.
Mhm.
So I was very comfortable right off the bat because I was working with guys that I was friends with and knew. And then, sort of as it got deeper into it, and all of a sudden there started to be all these clearly important people from Beverly Hills and stuff like that hanging out. I was already well into the work mode of it, and it was a great experience. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. The attention to detail was crazy, but that was actually part of the fun of it for me, because I was more than uh, supported. I was encouraged to, whatever stuff we were going to work on, to be as intrinsically accurate in every single detail as I cared to be, whether it was, obviously sonically, or um, arrangement, or anything. It was just, and I'm a person who loves research, so it was, and it's all the source material of all of this is stuff that I'm very obsessed with anyway. So it was perfect. It was really great. And Baz was a trip to be around, and his second in command, Elliot, is was incredible to work with. And of course, Dave has become an even closer friend. And as a result of working on the Elvis movie, I speak of me and the other the core musicians, Chris Powell, Brian Allen, and Philip Towns, the drummer, bass player, and keyboard player, respectively. Um, we've gone on to play on lots of records for Dave the last year or so, like the Warren Treaty's new record, and Chris Isaac, and there's many other projects that haven't been announced yet, and ones
Wow.
that are about to come out and stuff like that. Like that, us as a core team have gone on to work together a lot, and that's a huge blessing, because we love working together, and it's great, you know.
Yeah, that's exciting. And you also, did I see that you played on the song Vegas, that Doja Cat song?
Oh yeah. But
Wow.
that's made of
Different.
a sample, like they took something that we played and then used, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that technically on it, but
But
it's not like
you
no.
didn't know that it was gonna, like, that was something you had already
No, no,
done,
no.
that they just came in and clipped it.
No, they there's a lot in the movie where they took snippets of things we did and they extrapolated on them, which is
Oh,
really
okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's stuff that they didn't, and then there's all the incidental music in between scenes that's like technically the score and all that stuff. It's there's a lot. We recorded a lot of music, you know,
Uh-huh.
um, way
That's so
more than
awesome
is
though.
even in the movie. Like we recorded a lot.
Did you get a chance, like, do you remember I mean, it wasn't that long ago, so I think that you got a chance to go see it in the theater, and what was that
I
experience
did.
like?
Well, first and foremost, I wasn't able to go to any of the premieres, which was a huge bummer because I was working. The
Uh-huh.
timing didn't work out. So I finally went to see it with my wife. It had been out a couple of weeks, and It is a weird experience. You know, I've never worked on anything of that of this magnitude that
Mhm.
obviously, you know, millions and millions and millions of people, you know, it's you know, so that's weird enough. But it was great because you know, I'm watching it and it's, you know, every 20 seconds, you know, there's something where I'm like, oh, I think I remember us doing that, you know, like
Yeah.
it was, you know, it's, you know, because I remember the actual, you know, bits and pieces of us doing it, you know. So it's like I have memories connected to that, and memories and sounds are very interconnected. And
Mhm.
so it was very strange to like be watching the movie, but then I like remember little things, you know. And then there was one moment in particular. Um, there's a point in the film when they cut between Elvis in the 50s singing "That's All Right, Mama" and Elvis in the 70s doing "That's All Right, Mama," and then Arthur Big Boy Crudup, which Gary Clark Jr. portrayed.
Mhm.
And in all three cuts, you know, I'm playing guitar, you know, and it was just like, you know, and obviously I was born well after Elvis passed away. We both were. But it's like that's like the closest, you know, it's like I was playing for him. I was playing for Elvis, you know, like it was just very um moving,
Right.
you know, to be like, this is as close as I'm gonna get, I suppose, you know. And it was just really, you know, I remember being a child, you know, like learning how to, you know, like this is what made me want to do this. And it was just really cool, very moving.
Yeah. I
That
bet.
moment in
Wow.
particular. Mhm.
Sure. Oh my gosh, that's really awesome. And then it's up for what, Grammys and stuff? I know the Doja Cat song
Yeah.
is. Is this the
Yeah, no,
first time
we're
you've kind of been nominated for that or worked on a project that's been
no,
nominated? Yeah.
I worked on some stuff for Beyonce's Lemonade record with Jack White, and
Oh, rad.
that won a bunch of Grammys. Um, but this is, and there's some other stuff that's been nominated, stuff with Tommy Emmanuel and stuff like that. But this is something that, you know, it's like I was so intimately involved in that it's way more personal, you
Mhm.
know, because I mean there's a group of, like I'm saying, there's a group of people that I'm one of that, you know, worked for a very long time and worked very hard on it. So it definitely means more. So yeah, I mean, there's Grammys and obviously a lot of Oscars and stuff like that. It's very, it's incredible, and obviously it's very you know, I can't talk about any of this without, you know, saying that it's incredibly traumatic, you know, to just lost Lisa in this whole process,
Yeah.
Lisa Marie.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I know from the group how happy and proud she was of the film, and which was no small task. I remember actually in the very beginning process, um, like as Austin was being cast and as we were getting started, Baz saying to us all, he says, you know, he's like, I have an office at Graceland, and I've had an office at Graceland for several years as I've developed the screenplay for this. He's like, so I have the support, but I also don't have the support. Like, he's like, I don't know what Priscilla and Lisa are gonna feel about this until it's done, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and so they're, you know, their incredible support of the film and all that was, I know, a huge victory for Baz and his team, you know, because
Sure.
that was far from guaranteed.
Right, to get their, like, get them to sign off that on it.
Yeah, to get their blessing on it,
Yeah,
you
their
know.
blessing for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, that's so cool, man. I mean, congratulations on all the success. I think the album you've made, it's hard to believe that you did that at your house in 7 hours or whatever.
Oh
So,
man, just a bunch of old funky gear, you know, bunch
I
of
lo
old stuff from the 60s and stuff, you know.
that's
Just
cool.
plug it in and play.
There you go, man. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for doing this, JD. I appreciate you.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I have one more quick question. You kinda answered it earlier, but I'm gonna ask again. I wanna know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Um, well, don't be a jerk. Nobody wants to work with or help a jerk. Check yourself constantly at that. And I think just all of the things that have helped me the most professionally in my life weren't because I was out there rattling a cage, um, trying to make something happen. All of the greatest things professionally that have ever happened to me kind of came out of the blue. Um, and I was ready to accept them and do the best I could with them. So I think I at least can speak for myself that I've, you know, pushed away a lot of happiness and joy in the pursuit of trying to attain something. And I would say that if you can help it, just try and enjoy whatever it is that you're doing at the time, because it's not up to you to make something happen. It's up to you to be happy and enjoy what you do. Music's supposed to be fun, and it's really easy to make music or the arts not fun because you're trying to uh, figure out a puzzle that is impossible to figure out. If we could figure out how to take something it is that we enjoy to do and monetize it to the highest degree, everyone would do it. Um, it's there's an unseen element to it all. So the thing that you can have control over is how much you enjoy it, is what you're doing, and enjoy your life. So I'd say don't sweat it. Um, Laugh more, enjoy things more, and but also work your ass off so that when a phone call does come or something does seemingly just float out of the sky on you, you're ready to kick ass.
Bringing it backward.